Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode of Scrapping Scotland. Guys, today I'm going to show you the best way to make money from scrapping copper. Now, copper is absolutely everywhere. It's in all of them. It's inside that. It's inside that. It's inside them. It's inside that. And inside that. It's inside that. And it's also inside them. So you get the picture, right? Copper is absolutely everywhere. And I'm going to show you how you make money by scrapping that copper from these everyday items and what kind of copper you're going to get back from it. Now, when people talk about scrapping copper, this is the kind of thing most people think about. If you look at this big water tank, this big thing is copper. It's got this foam layer around it, but it's copper. And then think of the copper piping. See all that lovely copper? Can't scrap that out, I'm afraid, guys, because that's what carries my hot water. But this is what people think about when you think about scrapping copper. And absolutely, this stuff is fantastic. If you can get your hands on all this copper piping, excellent. Then you're going to scrap a lot of copper and you're going to make a lot of money. But not all copper comes from plumbing. So if you guys are familiar with my micro scrapping videos, you can see, as always, I have a table full of goodies. And this table is a table full of copper. So I'm going to take you through where I get all this copper and what it looks like and what's the best. Let's start with motors. Now, these are small motors. These are the kind of motors you get out of CD-ROMs and disk drives and that kind of thing. They're not big, so don't expect to get a lot of copper. But as you can see, you do get copper in them. Now, it's up to you if you want to take all this copper out of it, or if you just want to stick all that stuff in your motor's box. There's little bits of gems and nuggets that you can pull out of these things. So I have a look for them and I pull them out and I stick the rest in motors. So as an example, as you can see here, there's a nice little bit of brass attached to this. Okay, so I'll pull that brass out, a little bit of brass on top. I'll pull the brass out and I'll put the rest of it into my copper motors. So a lot of these little motors have little bits of brass. So just keep your eye out for them. If you are saving up your brass as well as your copper, then you can get brass out of these things as well. As you can see on the bottom of that one, there's a little bit of brass. And if you break that apart, you can get the brass out of it. That piece on top, that's all brass as well. And that's quite rare. So I've got loads and loads of these motors. You can see there's a very similar one here. There's no brass bit on the top of that, but there is copper inside it. There's a little bit of brass on the bottom. This one has a lovely bit of brass on it. Yeah, and that is quite a rare piece. But this is about copper, and there's copper inside that, and inside the copper looks like that, a little copper wheel. Okay, so like I say, it's micro scrapping, guys. It's a small piece of copper. You can take that little copper wheel out of there and you can take that copper wire off it, or you can just stick it straight in your copper motors. The next thing we're going to look at is Mosfets. These Mosfets all come off things like power boards, and they're usually attached to a piece of aluminium, and even sometimes they're attached to a piece of copper. But these are actually great for copper. They're really heavy once you get a lot of them, and they're really easy to take apart. There are other videos on my channel that show me taking these apart, how easy they are and how much these kind of guys weigh. So, they are all copper. And they're all easy to get and easy to scrap. Okay, as I say, these things, they do take a little bit of effort and a bit of time to take them apart and clean them up, but that's a nice chunk of number 2 copper. So Mosfets, guys, don't leave them on your power boards. Take them off, take off the plastic piece. A lot of people say there is gold and silver wire inside those plastic pieces. Personally, I know people that have tried to recover the gold and there's very little. So what I would say is definitely go for the copper. It's up to you if you want to go for the gold or silver. This little guy comes out of a motor that is in a computer. So it's actually a hard drive motor. And inside these hard drive motors, there is normally around 3 or 4 of these little things. I've got a few. So there's a few of them. Again, small, but if you are scrapping out hard drives, then you will come across a lot of these little things within the motors, and they'll build up pretty quickly as well. These things are UK plugs. Now you'll be saying to yourself, plugs aren't copper, they're brass. And you would be right, these are 2 brass plugs. But the bit on top, which is the bit that holds the fuse, this, my friends, is copper. So a lot of people just throw all that into the brass, and that's fine if you want to do that, but you can take the little piece off the top and stick that straight in your copper bin. Happy days. So next on our copper scrapping list is this little thing here. Now, if you are familiar with scrapping out microwaves, then you're going to have come across this. This is the magnetron core. And as you can see, I've cut off the top and I've cut off the bottom. And inside, you've got that lovely piece of copper. Okay, you do need to be a bit cautious cutting these things. People do think that they still contain beryllium, these magnetrons, but they don't. They haven't contained beryllium for many, many years. But, you know, caution's fine. And I would always say, if you are cautious, then that's a good thing. So tape up the ends, cut off the edges, and you're left with this little baby, this little nugget of copper. Okay, and if you do a lot of microwaves, you'll get a lot of these. Okay, with microwaves as well, obviously when I'm talking about motors like this, small motors, you do get a small motor that turns the plate, and that's called a synchronous motor. So you will come across them as well, and they're easier to get the copper out than these things are, that's for sure. So what's this pile of copper? Well, this pile of copper is heat sinks. These are mostly out of laptops, but some pieces do come out of computers as well. And if you are familiar with scrapping out laptops, you'll be familiar with this. Sometimes this is aluminium, sometimes this piece is aluminium, and you just get a little bit in the centre that is copper. So a little bit like that, okay? And that can come out of an aluminium piece. You can see there's still a little bit of aluminium on the bottom of that, okay? But sometimes you're lucky enough to get a whole one that's all copper, and that's what this one is. So I get these out of laptops, and as I say, you're always going to get this piece is going to be copper, sometimes the rest of it is aluminium. But again, if you're scrapping out laptops, you'll come across a lot of these heat sinks. So as you can see, a few more here. This one painted on one side, that's fine, still just number 2 copper. It's got a little bit of aluminium on the bottom of it as well, again just as it's been pulled off an aluminium heatsink as well. But then you get big aluminium heat sinks, and sometimes in the middle of them you've got a big copper donut like this. Donut, circle, I don't know, what would you call that? I'd call it a copper nugget. Okay, scrapper's gold. That's a nice little heavy piece. Okay, and again, always worth pulling out your heat sinks, separating the copper from the aluminium, and you can get a nice bit of copper and aluminium, but copper is what we're doing today. Sometimes you get a nice little surprise with the copper as well. So I scrap out a lot of plugs, power packs, that kind of thing. And plug power packs are really good for small transformers. But sometimes you get lucky, and instead of it being aluminium heat sinks in it, you get a nice copper one. So here's a nice copper one. that came out of a power pack. Again, quite rare to find them. You know, maybe I would say 1 in 50 or something. I do would be a copper one. But yeah, always nice to find. Always a nice little Brucey bonus. I mentioned there the plug power packs, the AC adapters, and you get a lot of small transformers in them. And this is the kind of copper you get out of those small transformers. So really nice copper. Usually one side is quite thin copper like this, like hair-like copper, and the other side of it will be thicker wire. Okay. You get 2 of these always in one of the transformers that you get out of an AC adapter. Okay, so as you can see, quite a lot of them. Okay, I've not got one on the table, but obviously the big transformers as well are a great source of copper, and you get them out of things like microwaves. You can also get them in stereo units as well. I find the old kind of hi-fi systems have really nice big transformers, and they are always really worth taking apart. Quite easy to take apart, quite a lot of trash inside them, but you're hunting for that transformer. Okay, with microwaves as well, it's getting much more rare to find double copper transformers. Sometimes you'll find them, sometimes you won't. Most of the time nowadays you're going to find them in their aluminium. I have found ones that are aluminium and copper. Okay, so it's just potluck, but keep hunting, guys. The fun can be in the hunt. If you're scrapping power boards and circuit boards, you will come across a little bit of copper foil, and sometimes these are wrapped around the ceramic transformers. So when I say the ceramic transformers, these are the ones that are wrapped in yellow tape and have a bit of ferrite on the outside of them. Sometimes there is a little bit of foil in them as well. So you can build up the foil. It's not too much I've got sitting here, but I have a lot more than this. But again, just showing you as a bit of an example that there is also copper foil. This copper piping you can see here comes from a compressor unit. So this was one of these deep freeze refrigeration units. You know the type where you used to go into the shop when you're a young guy or a young lady and buy an ice cream, and it had a big chest freezer, and you just open up the top, slide up the top window and pull out your ice cream. Well, this was attached to the compressor on the back of one of them. So this is a nice chunk of copper piping. Again, not all compressors that you get off refrigeration units will have this amount of piping, but some of them do, some of them don't. Some of them have little bits like this that are attached to the compressor. You need to be careful with some of that because there is steel stuff in there as well. Sometimes it looks like it's copper, so just check it with a magnet. Make sure the bit you've got and you're putting in your copper pile is actually copper. You'll see these pieces a lot on compressors as well. This one's obviously been opened and the crap taken out the inside of it, and just the copper goodness left. Okay, again, when you're cutting these open, guys, just make sure you are wearing safety equipment. Make sure you've got a mask on and that you've got goggles on. But again, good copper, number 2 copper again. Okay, little bits of copper wire attached to that as well. Okay, but compressors, guys, absolutely fantastic source of copper. And like I'm saying, there's copper attached to the compressor as well, and that's what this is. Well, we're definitely getting through our copper, and the next item you can see here is microchips. These are microprocessors. Okay, again, guys are after these for the gold, obviously. We love the gold, and there's nice gold on these. These are all no pin chips. Okay, but the key part that we want to talk about here is this copper top. Now, if you sell chips, if you're in America or in Canada and sell your chips to board sort, then you will leave it like that and you will send that in like that. You will not take off the copper top. Okay? However, if you process your gold, if you put all this stuff in nitric acid and recover your gold, then you're going to take off the copper top. Okay? So the weight in this chip is significant, and it's weighty because that top, even though it looks like it's silver, obviously the colour is silver, but that is copper, okay? And as you can see, there's a lot of copper top ones here. There is one, once removing from the board, that did come off. That one's not too thick, but these ones are quite common as well, and they're copper as well. Okay, so processors, CPUs, you get a nice copper top. Before we get into our various copper wires, just want to show you these guys. This is copper from the commutator that is on an armature. An armature is the rotating piece inside a stator which makes a motor work. So these are the pieces that come off of the commutator, and they are all copper. Okay, they can have a little bit of ceramic attached to the back of them when you pull them off, but it's fairly easy to get that off. Sometimes it's really easy to get these off, sometimes it's a little bit more challenging, but it's all copper. So if you're removing copper wire from your motors, don't leave the copper on the commutator, take them off the armature. And now we start to get into our copper wire. These guys are your copper bells. And these copper bells come from CRT TVs or your old style computer monitors. These are surrounding the top of the glass piece, around the kind of vacuum sealed glass. They're really easy to get off. They're kind of wrapped in plastic. They kind of sit around each other, one that side, one that side, one this side, and you just get them a good whack with a hammer and you can separate it quite easy, and you get a nice bit of copper for this. So as you can see, it is all individual strands of wire, but it is all lacquered as well, which is why it stays together the way it does. But again, if you come across old style CRT TVs or old style obsolete computer monitors, then this is the type of copper that you get out of them. Okay, you don't come across that many nowadays, I have to say. Certainly less than you used to. I certainly don't come across many anymore. I get a lot of flat screen TVs, but not as many CRT ones anymore, which is a shame because I do enjoy scrapping these copper bells out. But not only copper bells is what you get out of CRT TVs, you also get a degaussing cable. And the degaussing cable has lovely copper as well. So this is one degaussing cable, and as you can see, that is beautiful copper. Yeah, it's still covered in lacquer, it's still number 2 copper, but it is really nice looking copper. You just need to unwrap the electrical tape that's wrapped around it, and you get a nice bit of copper back from that. Got another one here which I thought I'd show you. It is still copper, but this one's coloured pink. You do see sometimes different copper wire coloured differently. You do get green, blue, pink, whatever it may be. But it's all copper, guys. It's all the same. It's still number 2 copper. They're not going to mark you down at the scrapyard because it's pink. And I think it looks quite pretty. So there you go. There's degaussing cable wire. This fluffy stuff, the really thin wire, the hair-like wire, these all come from relay switches. You find a lot of relay switches again on electronics. They can take a little bit of time to scrap out. It's obviously like a little plastic box, and there's a little reel of copper inside them, and a little bit of brass and a couple of silver contacts. But you know, once you take it apart, then you separate your brass, you separate your silver, and you've got that little copper reel which gives you this type of hair-like copper. And again, this can build up really quickly if you do a lot of relays, but it does take a little bit of time to take them apart and separate all the stuff out. But it's nice copper. These two balls of copper, slightly different colour again. These are from a motor, but they're from a different type of motor to, your standard motor. These are from water pump motors. And they're usually encased in plastic. And you need to break the plastic open and pull the copper out of it. Once you get the plastic open, it's actually quite easy to pull the copper out. And there's always a nice bit of copper inside them. It's actually quite deceiving. They look like they're small units with hardly anything in them, but they're absolutely stacked with copper inside. So always worth getting your water pumps and, taking out the copper that's inside them. So there you go. Water pump copper. This copper here all comes from scrapping boards, circuit boards, and all the copper on it, all the copper that I've got in this pile, all different colours, all different thicknesses. This stuff here, this red stuff's quite thick. This stuff looks kind of more traditional and thinner copper wire. This stuff again is really thick. All of this is copper, and they all come from inductors. So again, scrapping inductors like small transformers from circuit boards can take a lot of time and effort, but if you put in that time and effort, you do get a good bit of copper back from them. So, as you can see guys, I'm sitting in my living room on the table, got football on the TV, and this is when I do a lot of my micro scrapping. And again, it's not about investing my time. My time is not put back on money. My time is just I'm sitting doing nothing other than watching TV and taking stuff apart and getting some copper. So inductors, this is the kind of copper you'll get back. Okay, I say transformers, inductors, bit of effort, but you do get a nice bit of copper. This copper wire is the wire that you get from motors. So when you take a stator out of the motor and take that apart, this is the kind of copper that you cut out of it. Okay, so even when you're taking apart like a compressor, if that compressor is a copper compressor, then this is the kind of wire you're going to get back from that. Okay, so it is good, nice quality wire. As you can see, lovely copper there. But it's covered in lacquer again, so this is still number 2 copper. Okay, but again, this copper adds up really quickly. If you scrap out a lot of motors, you're going to come across a lot of this stuff. Some of it cleaner than others, but again, it's still fine. It's still all number 2 copper. And that is going to be the majority of the stuff that you're taking apart. I know a lot of guys and scrappers online, I see them buckets full of stators and copper motors, and this is the kind of copper yield they're going to be getting from that. And as you can see guys, we've got 2 items left here. Now both of these in the UK are classed as bare bright wire. Now what is bare bright? Well, bare bright is stripped from power cords. So all this stuff here comes out your standard power cord. Okay, ones with your plugs on the end that you plug into your socket in the house to make your electrical appliances work. Okay, this is all stripped wire from those power cords. Okay, I wrap it up nice and easy just to make it more manageable, but that's all stripped copper, and this contains no lacquer, so this is bare bright. Okay, now I know some other yards in other countries will not class this as bare bright, because bare bright somewhere else has to be a certain thickness. Okay, here this is classed as bare bright. Okay, so as you can see, nice strands of copper. all beautiful, no lacquer, all straight out of power cords. And I have loads of this stuff because I scrap a lot of power cords. Okay, and the final one is single core wire. So this stuff, as it says on the tin, is single core. It's not multiple strands wrapped together, it is one strand of copper. This is the stuff, and like I say, when I was talking about there about other countries that it needs to be a certain thickness, this is the stuff that they'll class as bare bright. Okay, again, no lacquer, this is just pure copper. Okay, and these guys, these are worth more than the other copper. Okay, other copper, all this kind of stuff, this will all go as heavy copper within my yard. This stuff goes as bare bright, it's worth more money. Okay, and some copper yards, or some yards with your copper, give you different prices depending on what copper you bring in. So things like copper piping, brazery, that kind of stuff will be a different price to your copper number 1, your copper number 2, and your bare bright, your single core, whatever that may be. Now obviously as well, you know, I have showed you a few things here that contain copper that, you know, I've not stripped down to the bare copper. This stuff is exactly like that as well. So you can take your power cords in without stripping all this stuff down to the bare copper, and you will get money for your power cords. Okay, now obviously you're not going to get as much because it's got a lot of plastic on it, so I strip all mine back. Now the reason I do that, guys, and a lot of people are saying that's a waste of your time and all the rest of it, my yard doesn't give you a price for singles. Okay, when I say singles, if you have a power cord and it's a black cord and inside there's a twin wire, like a blue and a red wire, that blue and red wire would be classed as a single. Okay, it's got one piece of plastic and underneath that is your copper. Okay, so that's single wires. My scrapyard does not give you a price for that, so I strip everything that's strippable, guys, to be honest with you. I got a nice little stripper at home. Again, I'll sit here and I will just strip that copper back while I'm watching TV, and I'll get these nice big copper donuts and make myself a good bit of cash when it comes to the copper. I do have these brass plugs pins sitting here as well, guys. Okay, now the only reason I wanted to show you these is sometimes, definitely with big copper cable, and obviously I've not got any real big copper cable here to show you, but these connectors are very often copper as well. Okay, so all these ones here, these ones are all brass. Okay, but commonly these circular ones are copper. Okay, so again, just something to be aware of. Give them a rub with a file and have a quick check to see if it's copper or brass. Okay, that's it for this one, guys. Thank you as always for tuning in to Scrapping Scotland. It is a pleasure to have you along with me on this specific copper teardown. Hopefully that gave you a little bit of knowledge in terms of different items where you can find copper. Mostly, as I said before, you're going to find it in inductors, transformers, motors, but there are other places to find it as well. Okay, it's not just, again, plumbing. Plumbing has a lot of your big copper pieces, but like I say, there's copper everywhere, guys. So go out there and find it and make yourself a little bit of cash from that copper. Okay, thank you for watching as always. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, then please do hit that subscription button. And if you liked the video, then please hit the thumbs up as well. And why not go and check out another couple of Scrapping Scotland videos. Okay, there's lots of them out there, and I'm sure you'll find one that covers whatever subject you're interested in scrapping. Okay, until next time, guys, thanks for watching. See you again soon.